Good afternoon, I'm Anne Trujillo, and welcome to Politics Unplugged. And we have a lot on the agenda for you. We'll get to the highlights of what's happened in politics, but the week overshadowed by a profound sadness over the shootings in Baton Rouge, St. Paul, and in Dallas, and we are all outraged.
This is not just a black issue. It's not just a Hispanic issue. This is an American issue that we should all care about. All fair-minded people should be concerned.
So we want to begin with a dialogue about what is happening in our country right now. We're joined today by two people who have very strong feelings about the police shootings and the tensions between police and people of color. Alex Landau is here with us, and Tay Anderson is here with us. And Tay, let's start with you because I know you organized the march in Denver. Why did you feel the need to do that?
I felt that it was needed here in our city because in our city, when we look at the Black Lives Matter protest, we haven't really had any peaceful protest here in the city of Denver. And when I look back at last year's Black Lives Matter protest, I noticed that people were still getting in the police's face. They were still saying F the police. They were still cussing at them. And this one, we had no interactions with police officers. We marched peacefully. We sang songs, we chanted, but we were organized and we were peacefully together. And it got to the point to where we took up about 3 city blocks because we were that long.
And why you? Why did you want this to happen?
I wanted this to happen just because I've had enough of African Americans being gunned down in our streets. Our African American men and women matter in this country. And so I took the stand and I said we need to come together as one. And we had people from all different sorts of colors out there, from white to black to Asian. And that was something that you really don't see here in America, is all those colors coming together for one reason, and that was Black Lives Matter.
Let's bring Alex into this conversation here. You were pulled over in 2009. Give us some background on what happened to you.
Yes, so basically I was racially profiled when I was driving home after midnight with a friend of mine. And the pretextual stop of the allegations of an alleged illegal left turn, which proved to be false, after I exercised my civil rights to ask for a warrant or to just have a basic conversation with law enforcement, not in cuffs or even being detained at the time. Their response was to beat me within inches of my life with fists, a radio, flashlight, a service revolver, falsified charges to justify their actions of abuse, laugh at me and call me. And that was all dismissed by a public defender, and I later went on to procure civil representation, and I sued the city and county of Denver.
What are you feeling today when you see events happening in Baton Rouge, when you see events happening in Dallas?
Well, you know, a lot of it, I believe, mimics practices that we've actually seen here in Denver locally. July is historically, since 2009, been one of the most violent months for interactions between law enforcement and community members, and that also creates the consequence of it being one of the most expensive months for civil settlements. And when I see things like what's happened in Baton Rouge, what's happened in Minneapolis, and what's happened in St. Paul, what's happened in New York, and really across the country, I see a pattern of demonizing the person who was injured or killed, and I see no resources offered to the family members to help cope with this trauma, and I see law enforcement covered by impunity offered through the criminal justice system for them to get away with such actions.
I was speaking with Aurora's police chief, Metz, literally just right before this broadcast, and he said there has to be more dialogue. Do you see any effort to have dialogue between our minority communities and police? Can that happen?
It can happen, but in the city and county of Denver, the police chief and the mayor haven't taken the steps to make that happen. They came to the school, to one of our Denver public schools, and said, "Hey, we challenge you to build better relationships between the police and the youth," but there was really no follow-up. And then we need somebody, when we look at our political leaders in the city and our chief of police, we need somebody that's for the people, and that's not going to go around the rule books. That's actually going to call us in when there's an issue like Black Lives Matter that pops up, and not run away and tell people don't sleep in my parks or I'm going to arrest you. That's just not okay.
And part of that dialogue, I think, also is the fact that it's a one-sided conversation. It's almost like an indoctrination of young people. And if you don't have folks who are well-versed and experienced in dealing with law enforcement abuse or patterns and practices and cultural use of violence on predominantly Black, Brown, Latino, and poor communities, it really creates a one-sided dialogue. And with young people especially, to really even the playing field and to have honest dialogue and communication, you need folks who are experts from the other side, people who have gone through the trauma, people who have survived and are continuing to deal with the trauma, but also are taking positive steps to help reform this system that's functioning exactly how it's been designed to function.
So how do you do that? How do you do that in this day and age? I mean, truthfully, nobody wants violence. How do you accomplish that, what you're talking about?
I think step one is having the honest dialogue around real race relations between communities of color, low-income communities, and law enforcement. And, you know, it is a tragedy that multiple officers were gunned down in Dallas. And at that same token, I wish the same respects were paid to fallen Black, Brown, and Indigenous people who have suffered the same, if not more horrific violence at the hands of potentially some of those same officers.
Can we get there?
I feel like we can get there, and I had this conversation with another local news station earlier this morning, and I said that it is not okay for us to lose African Americans to police brutality and cops not get indicted for their actions, but when we lose a cop in Dallas, the whole city is scrambling for their killer. And so right now we have to figure out what is allowed in our rule books, in our laws, in our city ordinances, when it comes to what's the difference between wearing a badge and putting on a blue suit versus putting on a black suit and with a suit and tie and walking down the street. And I feel like we haven't had that dialogue, and I feel like we can get there. Yes, we can, but it has to be an equitable dialogue. We have to both come to the table. We both have to sit down, and we both have to say, this isn't working for us as cops, this isn't working for us as African Americans or the minority community, but this is what we need to change. And once we have that conversation with Police Chief White and the mayor, I believe change will begin to climb that mountaintop Martin Luther King wanted us to find.
Go
also
ahead,
on that same token, I think Tay's exactly right. You know, currently we have a discipline matrix that favors law enforcement, and they have an unlimited number of appeals. So it's actually very difficult for an officer or a deputy to be fired, and let alone prosecuted. They are offered impunity by district attorneys, and this is a trend we see around the country. So to begin having those honest conversations is a good step, while on that same token, developing true policy and reform efforts that will penalize individuals who engage in these violent practices.
Is there something legislatively that could be done right now, that should be considered right now?
It should be a mandated law in the United States of America that all police need to wear a body cam. That you're responsible if that body cam falls off of you. You are responsible for that body cam like you are responsible for your firearm. I feel like if we shouldn't have to go to Facebook or social media to see a phone camera telling us the story instead of a police body cam that supposedly fell off. We should see the story from the police officer so that we know what actually happened, and we can see the actions of both the police officer and the civilian.
Alex, we'll let you have the final word here.
Certainly. So in Denver, I think a great first step would be to revise the discipline matrix, remove numerous levels of appeal that allow officers the ability to continuously appeal termination or any sort of discipline offered by their direct superiors.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you both being here. Alex Landau, Tay Anderson, appreciate your insight as well.
Thank you.
We are taking a break. When we come back, we'll take a closer look at what happened in the race for the White House this week. We'll be right back.